Welcome to the Momentom Collective podcast. Momentom Collective provides training spaces and community around the world for unconventional minds and nomads to co-create the future. This podcast shares ideas on how we can transcend and shift towards our highest self. The third edition of the Momentom podcast features the talented producer and DJ Mose, who is constantly looking for deeper ways to connect sound and spirituality with the human experience. Join us as we discuss lucid dreaming, the creative process, and the spirituality of sound. All right. Welcome everyone. John Early here, coming to you live from Circus Island, and I am here on call with producer, DJ, and spiritual seeker Mose from his home in San Marcos, Guatemala. Mose, how are you doing here today?
Yeah, I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us here today about your passion, your music, some of your projects coming up, and we'll see where else this conversation can flow into. But I guess to start off with some formalities, give us your name, where you're from, and what your passion is this week.
Yeah, so my name is Mose Kagan. I grew up in Colorado, in Fort Collins, northern Colorado, a college town. And I took off traveling about 6 years ago, almost 7 years ago now. And that's when I first came to Guatemala. And I did a course here focusing on dream work and Hermetic Kabbalah, some other things, and it kind of connected me with the community here in Guatemala, and so I've been coming back down here for several months at a time, anywhere from 3 to say 9 months out of the year, and it's become my home base. This is where I spend more time than anywhere else. Mm-hmm. And I'm here. I've been here since the beginning of October, and I'll be here until, well, just a couple more weeks. I'm getting ready to start a tour in the U.S. I produce and DJ a very organic, kind of mid-tempo, steady beat style music, which doesn't really have a consensus genre name at this moment. It's very emerging still, but some people call it multicultural electronic, slow house. I like to call it deep tribal. It's got a lot of medicine music vibes to it, kirtan, mantra type energy. Yeah, that's what I've been really pouring myself into this season here on the lake in Guatemala. And I've been producing a lot this week. It's really been flowing out, and I just finished a remix for some friends of mine called the Hanuman Project, and this is actually a kirtan group. So they sent me the elements of their song, and I just finished a remix, and it only took me maybe 2.5 days to do it. And that's really fast. I'm normally taking a lot more time to work on a track, but this one, it just like flowed out. I was in my space and just super inspired, and it just came together really fast. So I've been just really inspired with the music lately, and really passionate about producing and sharing my music at a few events here and there, and kind of getting ready for this U.S. tour.
Amazing. Yeah, music is definitely a hard thing to put into genres these days. Genres doesn't really do music justice, I find. But I guess it could be put into the ecstatic dance kind of category, where it goes from slow tempo up, builds up, more room for creative movement. Or how would you describe the ecstatic dance kind of boom that's been happening? And you've been a big part of it, playing ecstatic dances in San Marcos and around in the States as well.
Yeah, so it's interesting actually. So I started this event called Sunset Cacao Dance here in Guatemala this year. and it's modeled very closely to the tenets of ecstatic dance. The tenets of ecstatic dance are traditionally no talking on the dance floor, no photography, no shoes, and no substances. So these are things that are typically very present on a dance floor if you're at a festival or a club or really any normal or common dance environment.
Yeah.
These
almost a requirement.
Yeah,
it's almost a requirement for people that want to move their bodies.
Right. Yeah, it's not very common that we have an environment where we can really just connect with the music and have a tighter container to explore movement and to explore our inner worlds in a space of music. But what we're doing here in Guatemala is a little bit different from ecstatic dance. It's a little bit more open. We've been experimenting with performances, with Momentom Collective also having a residency here. They've been doing fire and silks and a lot of different things that we've been pulling into it. So it's been a much more sensual, open experience here. And the way that I play is also, it's similar to the ecstatic dance arc of starting slow and having this big arc and then ending soft, typically with like a shavasana or a seated, lying down, meditative space at the end. But the style of music that I play is not so typical. You're not going to go to very many, or if any, ecstatic dances, at least established ones, where the DJs are playing the way that I do, in that it's really more steady and smooth. The traditional ecstatic dance template is going to be much more diverse in the music styles that are played. So it'll jump between genres, and it'll be a lot more dynamic. Whereas my approach is much smoother, and I like to think of it more as almost like a shamanic trance type experience, where there's this steady beat going throughout the whole experience, and on top of that steady beat, you have a lot of different range of emotions, a range of cultural instrumentation, chants, spoken word, potentially lyrics. So it touches a wide range, but it's always coming back to this steady beat, which you would find in a shamanic ceremony, where maybe they're beating a medicine drum or shaking a rattle. So that's the fundamental difference in what I'm doing. And I do actually have a couple ecstatic dances scheduled in this U.S. tour, and it'll be really interesting to take what I'm doing here into those spaces and just see how people respond to a little bit different approach. But I'm confident that although it may be a little bit different than what people are used to, but people will connect. I think there's something universal when the music is very organic and worldly.
Definitely, and it's been a special thing to be a part of as well with Momentum Collective there at Eagles Retreat. Such an amazing place to have that space be curated like that. And there's not many places where you can have that energy, like a full dance or a festival vibe, and then go straight into a shavasana with everyone.
Yeah.
I find that really powerful with your event.
Yeah, that's a potent piece, and I know we get people coming for the first time because it's such a traveling destination here. There's always people coming and going, and so there's always this fresh new energy. And for sure, there's always people there who have never been there, and people who maybe have never been to an ecstatic dance type experience, where we go through this whole powerful dance journey, and then at the end, as the music comes down, I make an announcement and ask people to sit or lie down. And I think a lot of people are like, whoa, really? Okay. But they do it, and generally people find that, wow, this is a really beautiful practice. It's such a beautiful way to express and move with the body so much and be so outward, and then to end and this grounding.
Just hold space together.
Yeah, just to integrate and sort of give yourself that space to just drop in at the end of such an experience. I think it's a really special element. Yeah.
Well, especially in a place like San Marcos, where people are generally used to kirtans and yoga and different workshops like this. Do you find it's harder to bring ecstatic dance to other places that aren't as used to the openness of that type of movement, or incorporating the spiritual elements into a DJ set or a dance?
Yeah, I can't speak from experience, because I've been fortunate to sort of be moving between these different vortex activated places where people are doing a lot of work and doing a lot of workshops and really open to a lot of different types of experiences that you wouldn't necessarily commonly find in mainstream places. But as you said, the ecstatic dance movement is really exploding. They're popping up all over the U.S., I know, and all over the world. So I think it shows that people are craving a space to connect with music and connect with movement and connect with community in a container that is healthy, where you leave feeling invigorated and rejuvenated, and it becomes almost a spiritual practice for many people.
Right.
A lot of people even will call it church, that it's their church.
For sure. And I feel like that's an interesting part about festivals these days, is they are incorporating more workshops and spirituality and safe spaces to just hold that energy in that closed container. Like, there's always substance abound in festivals and parties and dances. So it's interesting to see people going, hey, we can do this consciously and with more of a balance, like a sustainable festival lifestyle approach. So I thank you for being a part of that and embracing that and showcasing that to more people.
I do it out of love. I love to do this. It's easy.
Mm-hmm. And music in general, it seems to be integrated in so many different spiritual practices, from the Icaros in ayahuasca to many different cultures in shamanistic work. Why do you feel that music and vibration or beating of a drum or a rattle is so integral to connecting on that deeper level with plant medicine or different spiritual experiences?
Yeah, in shamanism they call it the sonic driver. It's the element that repeats. And I don't necessarily know why. I don't necessarily understand the scientific mechanics of why this has this effect, but just through my experience on dance floors, there is something really powerful there in using sound in an intentional way. And another area of music that is really growing rapidly right now is medicine music, and a lot of it can be thought of, a lot of it's coming from the use of plant medicines, so the Icaro traditions and these sorts of things. But there's also a lot of medicine music that's being created they're not singing to the plants. It's not about any substance. It's just it's more about this intention, and the intention of medicine being to heal. And for me, what healing is coming into a state of balance. It's coming into a space of peace within. And I think that these people who are creating this medicine music, they've done usually some work themselves, whether with plants or just maybe meditation retreats or whatever their work might be. And maybe they have come into a space where they feel this love and this peace within, and they just want to share that with the world. And so the music that these people are writing has this really beautiful intention of just sharing this vibration of love and peace. And in that, there's this property of it being medicinal and of it being healing, because if we take the time to receive this vibration that these people are transmitting with this particular intention, I think it creates a resonance in our own beings, and it allows us to tune into that vibration, which I think we all carry, but we're not necessarily tuning into because of distractions or because of obligations or whatever we may have going on in our lives. To set aside some time to just connect with this intentional music, I think can be a really beautiful, healing experience.
I do find there's a lot of intention and consciousness woven into your music. Every track that you produce does take you on a bit more of a journey than just, hook, verse, chorus kind of a thing. Tell us a bit more about this new label that you're producing music under now.
Yeah, so the label is called Resueño. So resueno without the ñe, the little squiggly line above the N. In Spanish, that means I resonate. And sueño means dream. So it's sort of combining these two words together. And I found it to be a really appropriate name for the label, being that I'm mostly in Guatemala here, where people are speaking Spanish. And I do a lot of work with my dreams, and I really like this term resonance as a word to describe maybe things that we gravitate towards, rather than good or bad, because it kind of removes judgment from the experience, and just it becomes this more neutral discernment of, okay, well, what resonates with me and what doesn't, and moving towards things that we resonate with. I just launched this less than 2 weeks ago with 3 tracks that I produced with 2 female friends of mine who are making a lot of this really incredible, inspiring medicine music, and took the vocals and the melody, the guitar, I recorded with them, and created more of a dance type track out of it. So produced it in the style that I produce, but with the energy and the elements that they brought to the table. And it's kind of setting the foundation for my intention with this label, in that I really want to fuse the electronic and the organic. I want to bring the medicine music vibe and intention into the world of electronics music and into the world of production. And I see how there's this parallel happening between these two worlds, and how they're starting to reach a point where they can fuse together in a really beautiful way. And there's more and more producers who are gravitating towards things like ecstatic dance or sober events or festivals with a bit more intention around different workshops, or it being alcohol-free. And so there's also this movement in the world of the electronic musician, where people are also connecting with this medicine music in their own personal time, but also I think the energy and the essence of what's behind the medicine music, this intention of love and of peace and of wanting to bring balance to the people who are interacting with this music. And so basically I just wanted to create a platform to bring people who are writing this medicine music, maybe with a guitar and their voice, and producers who are wanting to work with this kind of energy, maybe as a remix or a collaboration. So I have a few releases lined up that are wrapping up. The next one will be remixes of a friend of mine that I met here in Guatemala. His name is Jackson Lewis, and he released a really beautiful album of what I would call medicine music. And I got some friends of mine that I've met over the last couple of years, some of them while traveling and playing, some of them I've never actually met physically, but we just have this resonance in the way that we're producing our music, and got them involved in this project to remix Jackson Lewis. And now we've just completed. I actually just got the last track back this morning. So now it'll go through the process of mastering and some of the other distribution aspects before probably coming out in 2-3 weeks, a month maximum.
That's exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So you had mentioned a bit back there about dreams. I'm curious, how do you interpret dreams, and how do you let them affect your creativity or your approach to music?
So yeah, I was first exposed to the idea of working with dreams in an intentional way when I did this course here in Guatemala. It's called the Moon Course, and it's at this center called Las Piramides. And part of that course is they teach you how to work with your dreams, to learn, to grow. And part of that is also unlocking lucidity. So being aware that you're dreaming while you're dreaming. And the main teacher there, Chati, she's had decades of experience with lucid dreaming and has found incredible understanding through just her internal world, finding out things about the world and about herself with this inner guidance. So she's hasn't needed to depend on anyone else. It's all there within her. And this was fascinating to me to come to a place where someone was doing this and sharing this information. And so I've done several retreats since then where I'll separate myself from the outside world and go mostly into silence. And this allows a container for me to connect more intimately with my internal world. And a big part of that is with the dreams. So basically, the dreams start to refine, become more clear when you don't have a lot of information coming in from the outside world, because our dream world can be this mixture of events that have happened, things we've read, movies we've watched, conversations we've had, with this guidance from, let's say, the astral realm or from non-physical entities or our higher selves. So by isolating and removing a lot of this outside influence, it allows this relationship with the dream world and with this inner guidance to refine and become more clear. And in some of these retreats, it's been incredible just to see, as things go deeper into the process, how there is this intelligence there that's ready and willing to help and assist in my process, and to guide me to understand more clearly myself and my role here in the world. How it's affected my music has been maybe more indirect. It's not like I'm going in and asking for lyrics or certain bass lines or things like this. I know it's possible, but I haven't put so much emphasis on working with the dreams in that way. But I would say that my music in general is a reflection of some deeper aspects of myself. It's a reflection of my journey as a soul. And so when I'm journeying through these experiences, these retreats, and it's changing me, it's shifting these things within me, it's then going to be reflected in my music. And I'm not necessarily so clear on how exactly that's reflected, but I like to think that my music continues to go deeper and continues to find more space and more clarity and maybe a greater impact as I connect more deeply with myself and come into more a space of more peace and more clarity and more love in myself. I think then I have a greater ability to tune into that energy and express that in the music.
So where do you think this dream realm sits? Is it between the spirit realm? Is it kind of your own interpretation, or kind of mix between the two realms? How do you perceive your dream state?
Well, I I see it as a non-physical aspect of our experience. But beyond that, I think it's I'm not so clear by experience the different levels. It's clear that there are different levels, but I still consider myself a novice with all of this dream work. I've seen how you can have different levels or different depth of experiences in the dream world, which I guess you could then label as maybe this is a deeper realm, and give it a name. But
Right.
I haven't necessarily found through my own experience what those levels are. It is something that was taught at the pyramids, that there's seven different levels, but that's not something that I have personal experience with.
Right. You had mentioned silent retreats as well. What's the longest you've gone in silence for?
I did a retreat 3 years ago where I was on a mountain in rural Guatemala for 3 months by myself, and no phone, no internet, no reading, no movies, no outside information. My teacher I work with, he would come up every 4 or 5 days to check in, make sure everything was going okay, but otherwise it was just me and this house and nature and a lot of time.
Yeah, 3 hours is a long time to do that, let alone three months. What did you find the most difficult in that process?
When you set aside all of these things that we use to stimulate ourselves and to entertain ourselves, it can get really challenging to find contentment in just being. I think a lot of times the things that we entertain ourselves with are in a way a distraction, right? It's a distraction of just being with ourselves. Not to say that it's good or bad, but when you don't have these things to put your focus on, it can be really challenging to just be and maybe just to sit and stare at the trees, or to take a walk and not to have this film or this book or this music or whatever to sort of give our awareness, give our energy to, but to just be with ourselves. But that being said, there's two sides to this coin, and when in a state of peace and acceptance, these moments when you're just with yourself, wow, those are some of the most beautiful experiences I've had in my life. So it's interesting that both the most challenging aspects and the most beautiful aspects are really two sides of the same coin.
That's really fascinating. And I guess the most challenging part might not even be that process, but reintegrating the kind of reverse culture shock of going back into a society where we try and stimulate our senses as much as we can. And what was that like, going back into the reality of our world that we often live in?
Yeah, that was quite challenging. And I actually found one of the big things that I was having to confront was judgment. I found myself judging those around me and also judging myself, and that actually showed me, as I integrated more, I realized how out of alignment that was actually, and how it was showing that there was still so much I needed to learn, because ultimately I do really believe that we're all offered exactly the experience that we need to optimize our growth, and if that means binge watching Friends on Netflix, then do it. It's not for me to decide for anyone else what's appropriate for their path and their growth, and So that was a process for me to move through that judgment and then recognize kind of this divine justice that
Right.
that everything is in alignment and everyone is receiving exactly what they need, including myself.
So what was the first song or band you listened to after coming out of 3 months of silence?
Oh, I've actually had quite a few retreats. That was the longest one. But I've had 25-day retreat. I've had a couple 40-day retreats. So yeah, I can't quite remember.
Do you have a band or an artist that you come back to when you're needing to recalibrate yourself or to reset your love for music?
Yeah, actually, I was just listening to him yesterday. His name is Javid. He's a producer based in Berlin. I think he's got an Arabic background, and he just creates these surreal mixes of all of his own productions, and they take me to a space of such deep inspiration and really remind me of why I do what I do, because it awakens such beauty within me and reminds me of the potential of how I can use music as a tool, not only for others but for myself, as a practice, as a way to let go and just be and journey with sound without necessarily having to do anything else.
And especially being able to appreciate silence, you'd really be able to appreciate sound. It's kind of that, like you're saying, that duality of the same coin, of kind of needing both to have that full spectrum.
Absolutely, yeah.
Other things I know you've mentioned before that you some of your practices involves flame gazing, correct?
Yeah.
Fire
it's
gazing?
part of the dream practices. I know it's also a practice from the Hindu culture, the yogic culture there, but I was taught this here in Guatemala, and it's very simple. You just sit in front of a candle and you stare at the flame for maybe 3 minutes, and then you close your eyes. And when you close your eyes, after having stared at the candle, at the flame, hopefully without closing your eyes, doing the best you can without blinking, then once you close your eyes, you have this image in your internal vision. It's sort of like the residue or the shadow of the flame. And the idea is to then stare at that internal image and try to hold that for as long as you can. And generally, you can hold it a lot longer if you're really focused on it. If your mind starts wandering and you start thinking about things that happened during the day or things you need to do, and then you catch yourself and you come back to staring at the flame, many times it'll be much faded or it might not be there anymore. Whereas if you can really maintain that focus, you can keep it there much longer. And so the idea is sort of twofold. One is that you improve your focus, which is important in the dream world because they move so fast. It's frictionless, so sort of wherever your awareness and your mind goes, your experience also goes immediately. There's no body to slow the mind down. So having that more refined focus is extremely helpful. And it also helps you just to have a better view of the internal vision. One could say it as opening your third eye. So just by practicing staring into that internal space and focusing on this image, the idea is that it helps you to be able to stare into the space, maybe when you're crossing from the physical to the astral and the dream images start to appear.
It reminds me of what Gabrielle, the co-founder of Momentom Collective, was discussing is, going inward to create your external reality. So you find this is a good exercise to help you not just focus inwardly, but also kind of bring that inward focus then to the external reality.
Yeah, I mean, we're here in these physical bodies for a reason, absolutely. And part of my process with the spiritual work that I've been doing and continue with is I go into retreat to come out. I'm not interested in being a monk. I'm not interested in devoting 100% of my time to removing myself and being in a monastery or something like this. I see a great benefit actually in setting aside these periods to go within and really isolate myself from the outside and maybe minimize my sensual experiences. But ultimately I then come back into a more sensual experience and a more normal routine to interact with the physical world, to interact with people, to share my music, and to engage with my senses. And I find that having this rhythm between the two is an extremely potent process and feels really in alignment for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something so simple like staring at a candle can really yield such powerful lessons. I really love that. I guess my experience with watching a candle was the very end of an intense ayahuasca ceremony. I was alone in the Maloca in the Amazon, and this candle was the last candle burning in the Maloca, and there wasn't even any wick left. It was just kind of this flame burning on the wax on the wood floor. But yet it had such a life to it. You could see the flame was just hanging on for life to stay burning as long as it could. There was no wick. It was just this thing. And I kept thinking, okay, it's got to be done now. And it would see this kind of like push for one last flick or one last kick of the candle to kind of keep this light going. For me, it was such a powerful lesson of, these things that we might not think are have a living entity or a soul can really have this desire to have an existence, to just hang on and really push as far as they can to stay in that external reality. I found that so fascinating to just sit and watch the slow death of a candle.
Nice.
You've also gotten into tarot card readings. Where do you find value in tarot readings?
Yeah, so I did a reading for you guys, but that was actually extremely rare. I don't do that very commonly.
Right.
But I do pull a card every day for myself. So I do interact with the tarot regularly. And the tarot is part of this mystical system that I've been exploring here on the lake at Las Piramides, and that I continue working with. It integrates into the Kabbalistic tree of life as this kind of roadmap of consciousness, of creation and ascension. Basically the idea is that these images carry different archetypal energies, and that by connecting with those energies and understanding what they represent, it can give us a clearer picture of what's going on, of how these energies are interacting with each other, how they're present within us and present outside of us. And so I just find that drawing a card each day, it just brings my awareness to that energy and maybe offers the opportunity then to just observe when that energy becomes present in my day, or because much like astrology, where we have these 12 signs, all 12 signs are present in everyone and are present in all things. It's just a matter of degree. The same could be said about the tarot, that all of these energies are present, but some things become much more present and much more relevant in a particular moment or a particular day in this case. So I just find it's a nice practice just to tune in and also remind myself of what I've learned about what those cards represent. Right.
I'm curious to hear your interpretation of the meaning of fate that comes with these cards. Some people truly believe that they pulled this card for a reason, or there was a perfect card that came up for them. But sometimes you can find relevance in any card in the deck. So is it the personal intention that you give to it, or is there some sort of fate involved, or do you see what you want to see when you're working with things like tarot?
Well, I generally like to find reconciliation, so I don't think it's necessarily either or. I think it's both at the same time. I don't think that life is destined, but I also don't think it's completely free. I think there's a mixture of things happening here. And so when we're talking about, pulling a particular card, I think there's a mixture of how maybe there's an element of destiny that you were meant to pull that card and receive that image. But there is also, you made a choice to pull that card in that moment, and you move the cards around in a certain way and all of these things. So, I think it's a mixture, and I think it actually relates a lot to astrology. And I think a lot of people misunderstand astrology in that they think that the stars are affecting us. But I don't see it that the stars are affecting us. I just see it, it's like the clock, or the hand on a clock. The hand on a clock is not creating what time it is. It's just an indicator of what's present in that moment. It's an indicator of what time it is. It's a measurement. So in the same way, the zodiac wheel is kind of like this clock. And at any given time, there's a particular energy that is potentially more present than the other energies. It doesn't mean that it's going to, that somehow just because the stars are in this certain formation in this moment that you're going to be forced into embodying the energy of a Scorpio, if you're born into a Scorpio sun sign. And so in the same way, I think, potentially you could pull any card, and any one of those cards would have a lesson for you. And any one of those cards would be the right lesson for you. But for whatever reason, you pull the one that you pull. They say that whenever you get a tarot reading from someone, that you could potentially get the same exact message from two different people pulling totally different cards. And that this has to do with the idea that the person who is giving the reading, they're going to interpret cards in their own way. We all are going to interpret cards and the combination of these cards in our own unique way. And so basically the idea is that the person giving the reading will receive the cards that they need to transmit whatever message the person who's receiving the reading needs to hear.
I guess it's just the difference of being open to receiving that message, that acceptance to getting what you need. Yeah,
and I mean everything is connected, everything is related. There's value in all experiences and all information in some form. There may be more value in one form over another, but I personally believe that all experiences have this lesson and this opportunity for growth. So absolutely, it depends on the person receiving how ready and open and willing they are to receive that information and to receive it with open arms.
Mm-hmm. So you've been living in Guatemala now off and on for quite some time. What have you learned from life in Guatemala, and especially from some of the local traditions there, or from the local people?
I was just talking with a neighbor here who's been here much longer than me, and we were talking about how different, the local culture is to, let's say, the Western culture. Because there's a very significant expat population here, and then the local people who are of Mayan descent and who actually speak Quechical as their first language. Spanish is their second language. And many of them still cook over a fire. Some of them live in mud, adobe buildings. Many of these 1 room or 2 rooms, just a kitchen and a living space where the whole family sleeps in the same room. Many of them don't have running water as far as toilets. So it's it's a much different way of life in a physical way, and I think also in some of these other non-physical ways, just how they see the world, what's important to them. And I think there's more and more blending as we're coexisting in the same place. There's more and more crossover and sharing. A lot of people here are really interested in Mayan traditions, Mayan cosmology, the Mayan calendar. And so it's been an opportunity for these people to share information that they've been carrying through generations with outsiders who are interested in it. And then also the outsiders coming in and bringing economic value and bringing a worldly perspective and just sharing in everyday conversations, if it's with a taxi driver, a tuk-tuk driver, just sharing about where I come from and what am I doing here. And so for sure there's integration to some point, but then there is also this natural divide that exists just because we're coming from such different backgrounds, such different cultures. But I for one, I think that there's a beauty in that, and I think it's really easy for us to project onto others that they want what we want, and these poor people, they don't have what I have, or they are lacking this or lacking that. Yet when you actually take the time to talk with people, a lot of these people are psychologically much more wealthy than a lot of people I know in the States. And we're so focused on material wealth in the States that a lot of people have sacrificed their psychological and emotional health. And so in a way I see a balance to that here, where people are living closer to the land and more connected with nature, and it's extremely beautiful here. And so a lot of the people do feel very blessed and do feel like they have enough, and that's been some powerful lessons coexisting in a place like this.
For sure. Do you think they have a stronger sense of community within their family, living with their family and people like that?
Yeah, it's I think community is available to us wherever we go. And here there are communities within the community. There's places where you can actually live with a bunch of people. There's also opportunities to do homestays with the local people. You can actually live with the local people. I haven't done that myself. I generally like to be in my own space. And something that's really beautiful about this town is it's so small that you can walk everywhere. And basically I have the opportunity to enter my own space, be in my own space whenever I want, but then walk into this community and be immersed in such a vibrant, diverse energy whenever I want. So it's really liberating for me to be able to choose how I interact with community here. Yeah, I find that's something that people are craving more of now, is that ability to tap into a like-minded community. I feel that's what Momentom Collective has been able to provide for people, of seeking that sustainable festival approach, or circus flow arts, or spirituality and yoga, while also maintaining that balance of independence and personal space. So I think it's definitely a balance between the two. But when you're in your flow, like you said, you've been really flowing with producing music lately. You find you have to hermit away, or do you prefer to have other people around to kind of collaborate and build ideas off of each other? Yeah, I think, again, it's both. but I do need that time alone for me to go really deep into the production. I really need isolation, and
Right.
like yesterday, for instance, I totally just set my phone aside and really disconnected from everything outside of myself for a good 3 or 4 hours, and that was
Right.
really important for where I went in that journey. But, you know, I do also recognize that we all have our own needs and desires, and the balance, where that balance is of interacting with others and being in our own space is totally unique to each one of us. And I do, the other side of that coin is, it's really nice for me to maybe just go have lunch with a friend, or to go to some event in town, and that can then be really inspiring to me and give me a whole new energy that I can work with when I do then go back home and isolate.
Right. Do you have rituals to help you kickstart your creativity?
No, not really. You know, it's, for me, I find it's either there or it isn't. And if it's not, then I just do something else. That might be go jump in the lake, or read a book, or watch a documentary, or take a walk
Right.
into town, or could be anything. But yeah, I just try and listen to my intuitive guidance inside,
Right.
and if it's
Try
there,
not to push through it, but just to say, okay, it's not here right now. I'll
Yeah.
come back later, kind of a thing.
yeah,
So what
and
does-
that can last? That can go for weeks or longer. There was a year period where I didn't finish anything, and yeah,
That's a long period.
Yeah. And there's maybe, you know, sometimes there's weeks where I just don't feel like doing it. But that means that there's space for other things. So I think just
Right.
being easy on myself, being forgiving, soft, and just allowing, that creative energy to come when it's there, and recognizing actually that it's a gift when it's there.
Right. So what does it feel like when Mose is in flow? And how do you try and sustain that, or best capitalize on that flow state?
I get high. It's very much like a drug experience. And sometimes
Like in your head, in your body, or
yeah, both. It can really come strong to where I really feel as though I very well could have taken a substance. It's a very similar sort of situation. And yeah, the best is when, you know, I can't stop but move myself while I'm creating something, that it just is pulling at me so strong that I have to move with the beat, or, you know, that I get so excited that I'll laugh, or that it brings up these very strong emotions in me, that I guess I'm exploring as I'm creating. These are all signs that I'm going into deeper spaces.
Well, to close here, I've got a few questions, on, like lightning questions, I guess I could ask.
Okay.
What is your superpower?
My superpower, I'd like to think, is humbleness.
Your weirdest habit?
My weirdest habit is maybe I really enjoy having my green tea in the morning.
Who is your biggest inspiration?
My biggest inspiration. I'd say my teachers.
What about your biggest limitation?
My biggest limitation, maybe inertia.
Do you have any pet peeves? Your biggest pet peeve?
Pet peeve. Well, it's kind of ironic, but I would say judgment. When I feel judged or am around very judgmental people, I then find myself judging.
What's the most difficult part about living in Guatemala?
I would say, well, it's nice that it's hard to think of something. But I would say maybe just the limited access to certain products, whether it's food or electronics or certain things that I would normally have easy access to in the States.
Mm-hmm. And where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I have no idea, and that's pretty exciting to me.
Beautiful. Well, again, Mose, I really appreciate not only your music, but taking the time here to discuss it and some other aspects of life in Guatemala and life in the mind of Mose. So if you can tell us a bit more of where people can find your music and your new label.
Cool,
let
yeah.
us know.
So I have a website which is basically just a portal to all of my social media, and that's mosemusic.com. And the new label is you can find it on SoundCloud, on YouTube, Bandcamp, and that's you can find it under Resueno Music. So you don't need the Enye when you're searching for it.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you so much for taking the time here today and for producing such beautiful music and spreading the love of medicine through the art of sound.
Thank you, John. Yeah, it's been a pleasure talking about these things. You you have a way of digging deep. I appreciate that about you.
Well, I appreciate you being here and partnering up with Momentom Collective for some beautiful ecstatic dances at Eagles Retreat. So I'm looking forward to many more good times partnering up with you.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to happen.
This podcast has been brought to you by Infinity Hoods. Check out the assortment of these handmade, high-quality, and colorful fabrics and styles at infinityhoods.com, on Instagram @infinityhoods, or on a Momentom Collective artist resident from our new Momentom line of Infinity shirts. The Momentom podcast theme you're listening to is the track Beam Me Up by our friend and producer Arterium. For more eclectic soundscapes from Arterium, find him on SoundCloud. For more info or content from Momentom Collective, or to apply for one of our international artist residencies, visit momentomcollective.com. That's Momentom, Momentom. The
Momentom Collective Podcast.